vaping is less harmful than smoking or not. But to the insurance sector, they're much the same. And insurance and health company PPS says while smokers have long been rated as higher risk when it comes to health and life insurance, people who vape are now also considered to be higher risk. They are considered more likely to have increased medical costs throughout their lifespan. To take us through this, I am joined by Motshabi Nomvethe. She is the head of technical marketing at PPS. Thank you so much for joining us. We do appreciate it. Let's just start off with what risk you are at if you use a vape, because many people are now saying, well, I don't smoke conventional cigarettes anymore. I now vape, which is a lot healthier. Is it really?
Good evening, Heidi, and thank you for having me on your show. There is a raging debate, like you have said, between smoking and smoking e-cigarettes versus smoking traditional cigarettes. The e-cigarettes are obviously quite new in the industry, so we do not have as long a track record with them as we do with normal cigarettes. But the data that is starting to come through shows that e-cigarettes have as much as 2,000 chemicals in them, which include tobacco, which include nicotine, which are also found in our normal cigarettes. And it is because of that we are concerned about the risk that they do pose to individuals' health.
So what happens in terms of insurance? Because, you know, many people say, well, in actual fact, as I've just mentioned, you don't actually smoke the conventional cigarettes, so I'm not really at high risk as those that smoke normal cigarettes. Speak to us about the insurance and health care services when it comes to those that opt to smoke or use the vape rather instead of conventional cigarettes.
Yes, remember when we speak about insurance, there's two types of insurance. When you speak about life insurance, there's insurance that is underwritten, meaning that we will look into your medical history and lifestyle habits to determine your premium. And if we remember that the purpose of insurance is really hedging against a risk, in this instance, an illness or possibly even death. So the insurance industry itself, with smokers, we do cover them. However, because we know the risks associated with smoking, we charge what we call a loading, meaning that they would pay a higher amount compared to someone who does not smoke. And that is because, like I said, the data and obviously previous claims experience have shown us that these people are more likely to claim. And it might be for anything from if they get a version when they get a flu, theirs is worse, to something as extreme as cancer. So we charge them what we call a loading so that in an event of a claim, they are able to claim. And if I can maybe also just say that if they do not tell us that they smoke, that is called what we call non-disclosure in the industry. And the last thing the industry can afford, but more importantly, that policyholders can ill afford, is not to tell the truth about their habits, which include smoking, pay a lower premium, and then when a claim comes, it is disputed. So it's rather be honest, tell us your smoking habits, including social smoking. There are those who only smoke probably when they're in a social environment, when they are with friends occasionally. But tests have shown, if they go for a nicotine test, it will show that they do have nicotine in their system. And it is because of that even social smokers are considered as smokers and will pay a bit extra. Obviously, the loading amount will be different between someone who's a chronic smoker or smokes more cigarettes a day versus someone who smokes less cigarettes per day. But there will be that premium loading.
It's an interesting point that you touch on because, I just come from a long break in Europe, and this new e-cigarette is also very in fashion. And, when you say, oh, I didn't know you started smoking, and then they'll say, oh, well, I don't really consider this as smoking. But as you're saying, it should be something that is disclosed because it is picked up as somebody that is smoking, even though it's not the conventional cigarette. So maybe if you can just clarify that to say that even if you are smoking an e-cigarette or a vape or all these new fancy cigarettes that have now come out that seem to be the healthier version, insurance companies and these healthcare service providers still consider it as you smoke.
That's 100%. So anything that does contain nicotine and tobacco products, so it's your e-cigarettes, vaping, your hubbly bubblies, hookahs, all the names that we come up with is, like I say, all of them are still treated because they contain the same active ingredient, if I can call it that is considered as smoking, and therefore it should be told to your insurer. And a lot of insurers will ask them how often. And like I said, the frequency will determine the loading or the extra premium that you pay for it. But it is important to disclose that so that we quantify the risk that we are insuring, we charge a correct premium for that risk, and also to protect the other pool or the other risk pool of people who are not smokers, because then they will get a completely different premium. So two people, same age, the one smokes any version of smoking and the other one doesn't smoke, will be charged completely differently because of the risk that's involved. We do know that, and speaking more long-term, life-term, we do know that most people, you could end up in hospital, and even if not in hospital, but you might find yourself going to the doctor for, more frequently compared to someone who does not smoke. So all these costs do add up, and they do have an effect on the overall premium, not just on an insurance perspective, but definitely with medical aid as well, because you might find that now you're spending time in hospital, which does bring the costs up. And that's something that insurance companies and medical aids have a responsibility to look at. And like I said, to charge an appropriate premium so that everybody is covered. There's a term called cross-subsidization in the industry where non-smokers, for example, might be paying a higher premium to cross-subsidize those who are smoking. And that's what we are trying to avoid, because somewhere in there's a level of fairness. And the non-smokers will then say, but how come I am paying a higher premium? So those are the little things that's why we monitor it, so that we can charge the right person the right premium, but be covered.
Yes. Smoking a vape, is that something that insurance companies are looking at? And is there a significant difference in the insurance premium when it comes to the two different types of smoking, if I can call it that?
Not, like I say, as long as it does contain a nicotine, a tobacco product, it will be treated as smoking, and therefore the loading would be similar. Where the difference will come in, there's many other factors that we look at. So I think we should be careful also not to just isolate it to smoking, because I could be a smoker smoking e-cigarettes, but have other comorbidities. So then that will be added into that. So the simple answer is smokers, whatever type of cigarette or e-vape or hookah, all that fancy stuff, that is regarded as smoking rates. So there's a rate for people who smoke, and there's a rate for people who don't smoke, and that will be charged differently. And then, like I say, what's going to determine that loading that I speak about, is it a 10% loading, a 50% loading, 100% loading? That will determine on the frequency at which that you smoke, plus also if there's any other conditions that the company needs to be worried about. So it's difficult to give an exact number because there's so many other variables that will influence it. But the one thing I can say for sure is, if you smoke anything with disregarding the frequency, so you might say, I'm a social smoker. Once a week when I'm out with my friends, I smoke. I inhale an e-cigarette, for example. That would be considered smoking, and you would get a rating, a loading at least, as the same as someone who smokes a normal cigarette as we are used to.
Okay, great. I'm just curious to know, I'm not sure if you have the statistics or you are able to answer this, but are you seeing an increase in people smoking e-cigarettes and vaping, thinking that it's the healthier version of smoking?
Look, I don't have the numbers for that, but if I can just give anecdotal feedback, what we are finding, the one research we do know of, is that a lot of kids in school are smoking e-cigarettes, and they do it so brazenly, even in their school uniform, oftentimes, because their belief is that it is not smoking. And, so they feel free to be walking to school and vaping along the way, because there is that perception that has been created that it is less risky. And like I say, the fact that we sit with now is that e-cigarettes have some 2,000 chemicals in them, whereas your normal cigarettes have some 5,000 chemicals in them. But there's a huge overlap in terms of a lot of it is still the same. And like I say, the research is still very, very new. So it is quite difficult to pinpoint it just yet. But the fact that there is some 2,000 foreign chemicals going into your body is a concern. And that in itself should highlight that it is risky. We can argue about which one is more risky, but it is risky. 2,000, 5,000, that's a lot of stuff that's going into your body that we don't know of. But in our experience from the normal cigarette says a lot of that is harmful and will have long-term effects on your body and on your health.
Certainly. Thank you so much for your insights this evening. We do appreciate it. That was Motshabi Nomvethe, Head of Technical Marketing at Insurance and Healthcare Services Provider PPS.